Part 3. Lower Fire Month, 9th month, 4th day 21:00. Climb held a black object in his hand. This wobbly black object would have been perfectly spherical, but it was so soft that it was deformed, as though it had been squashed. He took this mysterious black sphere, which seemed to be filled with a black liquid, and splattered it on himself, his armor. The sphere splashed open, staying Climb's pure white armor with black spots. After seeing this, people would assume that the sphere Climb had just been holding was filled with some sort of black dye. However, that was not all. The droplets of black dye staying Climb's armor quivered, and began flowing over the surface of the armor, as though to cover its entire surface. Within seconds, the brilliant white of Climb's armor turned a gloomy black, without missing a single nook or cranny. The sphere Climb had just splattered on himself was a magic item known as a magic dye. Apparently, higher grade dyes could resist acid, fire, ice and other kinds of elemental damage, but the only thing this particular dye could do was change color. The reason for why he used this went without saying. It was because his pure white full-plate armor was far too conspicuous. Lakush had gathered the leaders of the various teams, and Climb stood before her as well. In the center of all the leaders was a female warrior dressed in a glittering array of battle gear. First was the magic sword known to all, the demonic sword Kilinarum. It was the size of a bastard sword, but nobody could see its dark blade, which reminded onlookers of the night sky since it was sheathed. However, the hilt alone spoke of its exquisite craftsmanship. Of particular note was the huge navy blue sapphire on the pommel, in whose depths flickered a flame-like brilliance. The full-plate armor she wore gleamed with the radiance which only platinum and gold could produce, and it was inscribed with countless depictions of unicorns. This suit of immaculate armor, pure as the driven snow, could only be worn by a virgin. In contrast to her Shing armor, the cape on her back was made of some sort of cotton cloth which resembled the gray of a mouse's pelt. This was the cloak of rat speed, which improved its wearer's movement speed, dexterity and evasive abilities. It was a deceptively powerful magic item. However, her floating swords, another famous magic item, did not seem to have been activated. Unlike Climb, Lakush was conspicuously dressed because she probably intended to settle the matter with her own magic. Beside her were other familiar faces. There were the members of Blue Rose, and Gaze of Stronov. Climb felt very awkward and out of place as he stood beside them. Lakush explained the details of the operation, which was to attack and capture 8 installations run by 8 fingers. However, there were only 7 teams. So after those teams had taken their objectives, the team leaders and Marquis Raven's bodyguards, former adventurers, each ranked above Mithril, would proceed to the last location, while the rest of the team members would continue to hold their objectives. They had to destroy as much of the enemy's fighting strength as possible and do their best to take prisoners. Failing that, killing them would be the next best thing. That was all. Lakush then warned the others again that they were going up against a crime syndicate that controlled the criminal underworld. They might encounter traps or very powerful individuals, so they could not allow themselves to be careless. Climb's body trembled. This was not fear, but stress from being given responsibility in such an important operation. Climb was much weaker than the other team leaders, but he had been chosen to lead a team anyway because he was stronger than an average soldier, and the sponsor for this operation had recommended him. In addition, Marquis Raven's personal guard, a team of former adventurers who had previously held the Orichalcum rank, had been detached to help him out. How could he back out when everyone had bent over backward to accommodate him? In addition, when he realized why he had been selected as a team leader, he could not hand that duty over to anyone else. Blue Rose, Marquis Raven, Gaze of Stronov, and Prince Zanak, who was in charge of firefighting during a civil disturbance. None of these people were connected to Renner. It was precisely because of that reason that Climb Renner's bodyguard had been chosen as a team leader, to show that Renner was deeply involved in this operation. It seems this was the brainchild of Marquis Raven and Prince Zanak, but why would they do this? Climb had no idea of their reasons. Even so, his heart gushed with courage as he resolved himself to complete this great task, in order to let more people know of Renner's contributions to the nation. They were dismissed after the briefing was complete. The man who had been waiting in the back called out to him in a casual tone. "Everything set?" That man, whose name was Brain Unglaeus, was the helper Gazif had brought along, and he was also Climb's assistant team leader. "The team's ready. We're just waiting for the word. Also, this is the path we'll be taking." That guy picked it. Brain handed Climb a map of the royal capital with a red line drawn on it, while Climb looked in the direction where Brain was pointing. There stood one of the former Orichalcum-ranked adventurers. He had been assigned to Climb's team. The man seemed to have noticed Climb looking his way and waved to him. In turn, Climb nodded to the somewhat aged man. Perhaps he should not have done so, being the team leader and all, but it was a natural gesture for Climb, given that his strength was nowhere near enough to qualify as a team leader. To Climb, he was not so much leading everyone as he was counting on everyone else to help carry his weight. As they were talking, a hulking person approached them and called out to Climb. "Oi, Cherry Boy, could you please not call me by that name?" Climb thought as he sensed a change in his teammate's eyes. Fortunately, nobody was looking at him with scorn. Someone seemed to be smiling on him from the side, someone with a strong attachment to him, like a parent doting on their child. "What's the matter, Garen-sama?" Unlike how she had been at the inn, she was decked out in first-rate magic items. The breastplate of her reddish-black spiked full-plate armor was inscribed with eye-like patterns. This was the famous suit of armor known as Gaze Bane. Her gauntlets were also somewhat unique, carved with patterns of two inert-winged snakes. This relic could restore the health of those it touched. They were called the Karikion gauntlets. The long, massive spiked war pick at her waist was called Full Iron. The luxurious crimson cape she wore, reminiscent of royal garb, was called the Crimson Guardian. Below her armor was a vest of resistance, a dragon-tooth amulet and a belt of greater power. In addition, she wore winged boots and a twister circlet, while the rings she wore also possessed powerful magic. This was the full battle attire of Garen, one of the kingdom's topmost warriors. She possessed this many jaw-dropping pieces of equipment because she was an adamantite-ranked adventurer. Much like her, Evil Eye, Tia and her sister Tina were outfitted with similarly potent magic items. "Oh, it's nothing. I just thought the Cherry Boy might be feeling nervous, so I came by to smack your ass." So she was worried about me. Still, Climb hoped that she would not keep calling him Cherry Boy. He could go to any old brothel and get rid of his virginity anytime he wanted. He simply had not chosen to do so. Just as Climb began weeping inside, Garen turned a keen gaze upon Brain, who was standing by his side. Climb's side. Brain Unglaeus, the man who fought the warrior captain to a draw. "I see, so those reports weren't exaggerated or made up. So you're Blue Rose's warrior, Garen. I see. Incredible. You're definitely worthy of being an adamantite-ranked adventurer team's warrior. In that case, do I pass?" Climb had no idea what they meant by passing and not passing. He looked at Brain, who shrugged and told him what Garen was thinking. "She came to see if I was a warrior worthy of taking care of you, Climb-kun." "Really? As if. What happens to you doesn't really matter to me. I just felt that it would be a shame for you to die a virgin, so I thought that if we had the time, maybe I could break you in. Still, now that I know that you didn't beat Illusion Devil by chance, you really are an incredible warrior." WuxiaWorldAudio.com. "Even without crossing blades, I can tell that it'll be easy with you around. Thank you very much. On my part, I now know the rumors were true as well. Still, it's best not to get careless. There's a lot of monsters out there who can kill us in moments." "Oh, aren't we careful? I don't mind men like that. Well, you're not a cherry. How about a quick tumble?" "I'll pass. It'll probably get squashed. Climb did not ask which part of him would get squashed. Really? What a shame. Be careful, Climb. Garen waved farewell and then strode off. As Brain watched her leave, he quietly said, I didn't expect her to be so nice, given the way she looks. It's not just Garen-san, but everyone in Blue Rose is very kind. Evil Eye Sama's the same way too. She might dress like that, but she's a very nice person. A masked magic caster, huh? That's right. Gazev said he met a guy called Ainzu Elgown who is also like that. Could it be that wearing masks is a trend among magic casters? Looks like they're moving out. Seems like it. The teams that have to travel a long way need to set out first, otherwise they won't be able to coordinate their attack timing with us. Both of them looked forward at the teams which were heading out before the others. Climb looked around, searching his surroundings for a certain woman. Naturally, she was not there. She ought to be moving with Prince Zanak now. He knew she was working hard, so was it selfishness on his part for feeling lonely without the chance to see her? We'd better go too, Climb-kun. Yes. Let's go, Climb told his team. Climb. The assistant team leader Brain Unglaeus. The 4 former Orichalcum-ranked adventurers. 20 house troops from Marquis Raven's estate. They were then accompanied by a high-ranking priest, staff from the Magicians Guild and various support personnel, all of whom had dealings with Marquis Ravens. In total, 32 people quietly set out.